if I quit, then she'll probably start harassing me, so. I'm only serious.
This meeting is being recorded and summarized.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call the April 30th meeting of the Environmental Resources to order. We will begin with item number 2, a Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, and we will stay standing for a brief moment of reflection afterwards.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Moving on to item number 3, public comment, 15-minute limit. I've got one individual signed up, Lionel Wisniewski, wishing to address item 5B1. So could you state your name and municipality for the record, please, sir?
Certainly. Lionel Wisniewski, Chairman for Town of Reed Rock. Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to present this today. I just want to...
1 second, Lionel. Is that mic on? Yeah. It is? It is. All right. Proceed.
Okay. I want to take the opportunity to urge a favorable consideration of the zoning ordinance submitted by the Town of Reed Rock with regard to the wind energy systems. It's been thoroughly researched, and as admitted at our previous meeting here, we had 3 options. I used a farming metaphor. We could be cattle in the pasture standing in the middle, accepting PSC 128 in all its form. We could be cattle with our heads stretched through the wire, trying to reach over the fence just a little bit and push the limits a little bit, or we could jump entirely out of the fence, which is what we chose to do, because I believe that PSC 128 is outdated, as is evidenced by the Wind Siting Council's outdated report, I believe, of 2014, wherein they used data from 2007 to 2012. At that time, a wind energy turbine was 75 feet tall with a generating capacity of about 0.5 megawatts. The current towers are 600, 650 feet tall, 4.5 megawatts. The 75-foot tower emitted a sound of about 45 to 55 decibels, which is about the speaking level I'm at right now. The current proposal at 650 feet, 4.5 megawatt, generates a sound at source of 107 decibels. For reference, a chainsaw, an operating chainsaw from 3 feet away is 110 decibels. We do not believe it is safe. We do not believe it is economically viable without federal subsidies, which are ongoing. We do not believe that it is in the best interest of the public health or safety of our residents, our domestic animals, the wildlife, the safety of our residents, the recreational opportunities, nor in the preservation of prime agricultural farmland in our community. So I urge you to vote in favor of this zoning ordinance, and in fact would offer that ordinance as a template for the county to adopt countywide. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Seeing as no one else sign up under public comment. We'll proceed to item number 4, approval of the April 2nd, 2024 committee minutes. I did have one change that I would like reflected in here. Supervisor Unger did message me prior to last month's meeting and asked that she be excused, so I would ask that she please be marked excused. With that change, is there a motion to approve? Motion by Seifelt, second by Kroll. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. First one of the term, folks. Moving on to item number 5, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. A, public hearings review, possible actions and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration, county zoning changes. Before I open the public hearing, I want to just educate the new members a little bit about what this process is going to look like. Every month at the Environmental Resources Committee, we usually have somewhere between 1 to 5 hearings on rezone requests for county zone towns. For county zone towns, we have to go through a public hearing process where we look at essentially the case that's in front of us and we determine whether or not it meets the standards for our ordinance in order for it to be rezoned. What will end up happening here is that I'm going to open up the hearing. Garrett, not Shad, Garrett is going to present a staff report. That staff report is going to have a lot of information in it. Chances are you already reviewed it and your packets are ready for today. If you have any questions for staff at that time, that's your opportunity to ask them then. Usually they present the staff report, then you can ask your questions. After that, we'll move forward with public testimony, meaning that members of the public who wish to speak for, against, and as interested for the rezone can approach the mic in the back. They state their name and address, and they offer their testimony. After all the testimony has been accepted, we close the hearing, and then we deliberate and ultimately make a decision. That decision is a recommendation that goes up to the county board. So you will see this again when you go to county board in May. Okay. So this is a hearing. So it's, no community discussion, right? We're accepting testimony here. But you are able to ask questions of staff and of course of the applicant as well. Once the hearing is closed, you cannot ask the people offering testimony any additional questions. You can ask staff for clarification on certain items. I just want to make clear everybody knows what the bounds are here. Okay. So we got, how many do we got today? 4? We got 4 today. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is please ask that everybody who's joining us in person here and anybody joining us via online to please mute yourself, mute your electronic devices if you are not the one offering testimony. So the Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is now meeting in public hearing on location plan specifications and purpose of the following projects. 5A 1 through 4, we have 1, Tim Vreeland on behalf of John Seehafer and Doug, farmland preservation and rural residential to general agriculture in the town of McMillan. 2, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Doug Seehafer, farmland preservation to general agriculture, town of McMillan. 3, Rob Anderson and Matt Byer, general agriculture to, one second here. Rural residential, town of Easton, and 4, town of Plover. We have text amendment changes to Marathon County, chapter 17. Let's just go around and introduce ourselves quick because, this is the first meeting of the term. Myself, Jake Langenhan, ERC chair.
Mike Ritter, vice chair. Rick Seifelt.
Al Drabek?
Kurt Gibbs, county board chair.
Kim Unger.
Randy DeGroot. John Cole.
Okay. We also have staff who are present. Staff, why don't you introduce yourselves as well?
Lori Miskimmons, Director of Conservation Planning and Zoning.
Nicole Deloney, Interim Office Manager, CPZ.
Morgan Arnold, Accountant of CPZ.
Shad Harvey, Land Resource Manager for Marathon County.
And Garrett Poggle, Land Use Specialist.
Kirsty in the back.
Oh, sure. Kirsty, if you want to introduce yourself.
Kirsty Heidenreich.
County Conservationist.
Lance and Mike.
Lance Leonard, County Administrator.
Mike Pierner, Corporation Counsel.
All right. I don't think at this time, farther along the agenda, we'll do that. All right, establishment of the ERC is required by law for purposes of administration of county ordinances and land conservation programs. This committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. This committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinances or state laws and must apply laws as written. The purpose of this committee is to hear and decide on proposed ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezoning petitions, and provide direction on land conservation and planning programs. The ERC will give a full and fair hearing to any person applying for a rezone petition. A taped recording is being made of the meeting, which will assist with preparation of written hearing minutes. The committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allowing staff to present a staff report, including evidence from any on-site inspection. The applicant and anyone wishing to testify will be sworn in and allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in the order of those first in favor, second opposed, and then third as interested may appear. The committee may ask questions of the zoning staff and applicant. It is necessary that we set a reasonable time limit on individual statements on the overall length of the hearing. To promote orderly discussion, anyone wishing to present oral testimony or ask questions relating to the hearing should state your name and present your testimony or questions so it becomes part of the official record. We request you avoid repetition. Once the committee has all the necessary facts, the chairman will close the hearing, allowing no further testimony, and the committee will deliberate and decide in front of the public whether the applicant has met the standards in the ordinance. No additional testimony from the public is allowed during the deliberation. However, the committee may question staff for purposes of clarification. After a decision has been made, the committee will proceed to the next hearing. Many of the decisions made by the committee are a recommendation to Marathon County Board of Supervisors, who will take up the matter at a future county board meeting. Please contact staff for more information regarding this county board process. So, the committee will now hear the application of 5A1. We have Tim Vreeland on behalf of John Seehafer and Doug Seehafer, Farmland Preservation, Rural Residential, to General Agriculture, Town of McMillan, and we will begin with our staff report provided by Garrett. So, Garrett, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so as Chair Langenhans said, each ERC, when we have rezones, we present a staff report. I'm going to go through the entire staff report at this point. Typically, we read the petitioner, the property owner, location, the public hearing notice, and then the meetings and the legal notifications, and then we go down to the town's recommendation and then the staff recommendation. But for the purposes of just getting everybody acquainted with what we look at each meeting with the staff report, we'll go through the whole thing on this first one. Okay, so to start off, we have Doug and Julie Seehafer, petition to rezone land, staff report April 30th, 2024 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Tim Vreeland, located at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. And the property owners are Douglas and Julie Seehafer, located at 114750 Shower Creek Road, Marshfield, Wisconsin, 54449. The area proposed to be rezoned is located at the end of Shower Creek Road on the north side of the road. The request, the petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Doug Seehafer to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from FP Farmland Preservation to GA General Agriculture, described as all of the outlots of 1 and 2 of CSM number 16772, located in the north or southeast quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 27, Township 26 North, Range 3 East, Town of McMillan. Area to be rezoned to GA General Agriculture is described as Lot 1 of the preliminary CSM, parent parcel numbers as shown. So each rezone gets accompanied by a resolution that gets sent to the town for their opinion, and they will send that back and tell us when they met on it. So their public hearing for the Town of McMillan Town Board, they met on April 8th, 2024, and then Marathon County Environmental Resource Committee is meeting today, April 30th, 2024 at 3 p.m. Legal notification. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. So in your staff report, we always show the existing zoning district, what it's starting out as. In this case, it is farmland preservation zoning. So the intent of this district is to maintain highly productive and agricultural lands in food and fiber production by effectively limiting encroachment of non-agricultural development and minimizing land use conflicts among incompatible uses. This district is not intended to accommodate non-agricultural growth. So part of each town's comprehensive plan is a existing land use map. Some of these comprehensive plans are from the early 2000s, some are from the 2010s, and some have been updated more recently, like the Town of McMillan. We pull this data directly from their comprehensive plan, the one that is currently active in their town, and this is the one that they are supposed to issue their resolution on and decide if the rezone meets their comprehensive plan and what they want to see in their town. So for the town of McMillan, their existing generalized land use map from their comprehensive plan written in 2021, the area proposed to be rezoned is shown as agriculture in the town's comprehensive plan, existing land use map from 2021. Adjacent land uses are comprised of woodlands, agriculture, and single-family residential. Just a note, it is not uncommon for the existing land uses or the land use descriptions in a comprehensive plan to not match what our zoning districts say as far as what the name is. They're more of a land use, like agriculture, commercial, industrial, versus our zoning districts that are a little bit different, like urban residential, agriculture, those kind of things. So there may be a little bit of confusion between the two comprehensive plan descriptions and our zoning districts. So the proposed zoning district is general agriculture. The purpose of GA district is designed to foster the preservation and use of agricultural and land-related uses and to provide limited residential uses in a rural environment, but not the division of land as classified in 18.072 and 3, and to 5 or more tracts, parcels, or lots within a 5-year period. This district provides for limited residential development with modest densities that require relatively large land areas that are compatible with the surrounding rural land use activities. The area is intended to provide towns with multiple options to guide growth and development in concert with the comprehensive planning effort. So the town of McMillan's future land use map from 2021 shows proposed area to be rezoned as exclusive agriculture in their future land use map. Adjacent land uses are comprised of rural residential, light industrial, commercial, and exclusive agriculture. So each rezone, if we identify whether that town participates in a farmland preservation program. The town of McMillan does participate in farmland preservation zoning, and approximately 10.209 acres will be converted to general agriculture. So these are the two properties that are proposed to be combined and rezoned. This is the certified survey map. When you look at the CSM, you'll see that the district or the size of it is usually shown out in acres. The dotted line to the right of the CSM shows the previous lot line, and then the hard black line is the new proposed line. When we have districts that are like this one that are similar, that are exactly the same, farm pres and farm pres, if it's underneath the minimum requirement for that zoning district in farm pres, it's a 35-acre requirement. If the new proposed lot is underneath that, it would have to be rezoned to the next district. So that is the case here. The next closest district is general agriculture, and it has a 10-acre minimum. So that's why they're having to rezone two zone farm pres lots to a different district as a general agriculture. So this is the town recommendation. On April 8th, 2024, the Town of McMillan Town Board recommended approval of the Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Next, we have the conclusions of law. This is based on how basically how the town comes to their resolution as far as their comprehensive plan, and then how the eventually the recommendation that the committee sees fit to make. So first, the rezoning is substantially consistent with the following plans. Note how the proposed relates to the future land use plan and the vision, goals, objectives, and policies of the plan, Marathon County's comprehensive plan, the town comprehensive plan, and Marathon County's farmland preservation plan. The Marathon County Conservation Plan relies on the town comprehensive plan regarding specific land uses and zoning district for individual parcels. The area proposed to be rezoned is shown to be designated as exclusive agriculture in the town's future land use map. CPZ staff rely on the towns to make these recommendations, giving the town board members and residents know their town and the true purpose and intent of the plan. The town of McMillan participates in farmland preservation. Approximately 10.209 acres will be converted to general agriculture. As indicated by the town's future land use map and resolution recommendation, it appears the rezone is consistent with the purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan. Number two, the location of the proposed development minimizes the amount of agricultural land converted and will not substantially impair or limit current or future agricultural use of other protected farmland. No farmland will be consumed. The applicant has demonstrated there is a need for the proposed development. Adequate public facilities are present or will be provided. Note impacts on road, water, sewage, drainage, schools, emergency services, etc. And providing public facilities will not be an unreasonable burden to the local government. The need is for the proposed land division, the combining of the two lots, All necessary public facilities are anticipated to be provided, if not already provided, given any proposed development would rely on private systems such as a private well and sanitary system if applicable. No anticipated burden on local government. All applicable building, construction, and use standards will be applied during the zoning and building permit review process. Number 4, the rezoning will not cause unreasonable air and water pollution, soil erosion, or adverse effects on rare or irreplaceable natural areas. All federal, state, and local permits and approvals are required for any applicable development on site. Additionally, the proposed rezone will likely not result in any unreasonable air or water pollution, as all the pertinent regulations apply and will need to be adhered to. Any disturbance greater than 1 acre would need a DNR stormwater management permit. Number 5, the town has approved the proposed rezone of property. The Town of McMillan Town Board has recommended approval of this rezone petition. Number 6, all county or concerns from other agencies on a proposed rezone have been addressed, DNR, Highway, and DOT. What are those concerns? The county was not made aware of any concerns from other agencies. The staff recommendation of the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Questions for Garrett? All right, I did have one. So they're taking land out of farmland pres and rural res, neither of which was being used for agriculture based on the information in the packet, and they're combining it under general ag, right?
Nope, so the next one is another Seehafer rezone with rural
okay.
residential.
My
This
bad.
one is 2 substandard farm pres lots that are being combined, and they're not, the new combined lot size is not big enough to remain in farmland preservation. It doesn't meet
That's
the
the piece.
35 acre minimum,
Yeah,
yep.
because otherwise I said, keep the existing land use and combine the parcels, but yeah.
Right.
They can't do it under farmland pres. Okay. Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, sir. All right, we'll move on to public testimony. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 5A1, I'd ask that you unmute yourself if you're joining us electronically or approach the microphone in the back of the room at this time. Call again. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call once more after this. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call once more. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. I'll call once. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 5A1, please identify yourself at this time. All right. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify for this application, I'm now declaring the public hearing on Tim Vreeland on behalf of John Seehafer and Doug Seehafer, Farmland Preservation, Rural Residential to General Agriculture, Town of McMillan, now closed.
Doug and Julie Seehafer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The next one is Doug and John.
What am I missing here? Are they switched? So we're reviewing Doug and Julie, right? And that's Farmland Pres to General Ag?
Yeah, that would be correct.
That was just what was presented, right? They're switched in the packet. That's exactly right, Mike.
Oh,
Yep.
gotcha.
That's all right. On the agenda, it was 5A1 was first. Does everybody else have that? Okay. And that's fine. So just to be clear then, the testimony that you presented was for Doug and Julie for 5A2 on the agenda.
Correct, yep.
Okay. That's fine. Just to clarify. Okay. I'll ask quickly. I'm assuming none, but I'll call once for each. That's fine. Yeah. All right. Calling once for each. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of 5A2, please identify yourself at this time. Anybody wishing to speak against item 5A2, please identify yourself at this time. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 5A2, please identify yourself at this time. Okay. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify for this application, I'm now declaring 5A2 Tim Vreeland on behalf of Doug C. Hafer, Farmland Preservation to General Agriculture, Town of McMillan, now closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. I think a motion to approve here would be in order. Supervisor Seefeld?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion for the petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Doug and Julie C. Hafer to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone land from farm preservation to general agricultural in the town of McMillan, and to pass the conclusions of law and forward it to the county board.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Ritter. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Let's go to the Tim Vreeland on behalf of John and Doug C. Hafer then for 5A1 now, right?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so for this one, in the interest of time, what we'll do is we'll go through the first page, and then we'll read the town recommendation and then the staff recommendation. So this is a petition for Doug and Julie C. Hafer and John and Tracy C. Hafer. Petition to rezone land, staff report April 30th, 2024 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Tim Vreeland, located at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. The property owners are Douglas and Julie C. Hafer at 11475 Shower Creek Road, Marshfield, and John and Tracy C. Hafer at 114764 Shower Creek Road, Marshfield, Wisconsin, 54449. Area proposed rezone is located at the end of Shower Creek Road. The petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of John C. Hafer and Doug C. Hafer to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from FP Farmland Preservation and RR Rural Residential to GA General Agriculture, located in part of the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 27 and the northwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 34, Township 26 North, Range 3 East, Town of McMillan. Area proposed to be rezoned to GA General Agriculture is described as Lot 2 of the preliminary CSM. Parent parcel numbers as shown. The Town of McMillan Town Board met on April 8th, 2024. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, April 30th, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. On April 8th, 2024, the Town of McMillan Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation. The rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Even though the plan was updated in 2021, which is a pretty recent one. All right, questions for Garrett? All right, seeing and hearing none, thank you, sir. Well, judging by the overwhelming response for the first one here, I'm going to call once for each of these as well. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 5A1, please identify yourself this time, calling once. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 5A, or sorry, anybody wishing to speak against item 5A1, calling once, please identify yourself at this time. And lastly, anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 5A1, please identify yourself at this time, calling once. All right. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify on the application, I am now declaring the public hearing on 5A1, Tim Vreeland on behalf of John C. Hafer and Doug C. Hafer, Farmland Preservation and Rural Residential to General Agriculture, Town of McMillan. Committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. Again, I think a motion to approve would be appropriate here. Supervisor Drabeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the rezone of Doug and Julie C. Hafer and John and Tracy C. Hafer from Farmland Preservation and Rural Residential to General Agriculture based on the findings of fact by staff and conclusions of law and the town's recommendation.
Motion has been made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Unger. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. All right. 5A3, we got Rob Anderson and Matt Byer, General Agriculture to Rural Residential, Town of Easton.
All right, this is for Rob Anderson and Matt Byer, petition to rezone land. Staff report April 30th, 2024 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Rob Anderson at 230352 Eau Claire River Road, Ringgold, Wisconsin 54471, and Matt Byer at 227805 Lodholst Road, Ringgold, Wisconsin 54471. Property owners are the same. Area to be proposed to be rezoned is located at the corner of Sporting Road and Eau Claire River Road. The petition of Rob Anderson and Matt Byer to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from GA General Agriculture to RR Rural Residential, described as all of Lot 1 of CSM number 18047 and part of the northeast quarter of Section 33, Township 29 North, Range 9 East, Town of Easton. The area proposed to be rezoned to RR Rural Residential is described as Lot 1 of the preliminary CSM, parent parcel numbers as listed. We did recently get the Town of Easton's resolution here yesterday late. So the Town of Easton did meet on April 8th, 2024. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, April 30th, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Town recommendation, like I said, on April 8th, 2024, the Town of Easton did recommend approval to the Environmental Resources Committee. I do have the resolution here. The staff recommendation, the rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Well, the only thing I'm going to say is I just want to see that resolution. We'll just pass it around here. Not that we don't trust you, but. I believe you. Sure. And this came from Easton yesterday?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Any questions for Garrett? All right, seeing and hearing none. Thank you, sir. All right, anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 5A3, please identify yourself at this time. Calling once more. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 5A3, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak against item 5A3, please identify yourself this time. I'll call one more time. Anybody wishing to speak against item 5A3, please identify yourself this time. Lastly, calling once. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 5A3, please identify yourself this time. Okay. If no one else wishes to testify for this application, I'm now declaring the public hearing on Rob Anderson and Matt Byer, General Agriculture to Rural Residential Town of Easton, now closed. Committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. Think a motion to approve here would be appropriate as well. Supervisor Ritter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will make a motion to approve the petition of Rob Anderson and Matt Byer to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from general agriculture to rural residential in the town of Easton due to town and staff recommendation.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor DeBrew. Any further discussion? The only thing I will add for the new members, that will get put into the county board packet for this month. The staff report will be updated. That's very rare that something happens like that. I appreciate the town of Easton getting us that stuff because otherwise we would punt on this for a month and we'd have to take up the rezone next month. So, all right. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right. 5A4, Town of Plover text amendment changes to Chapter 17. Y'all are going to learn about shipping containers. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so for our new members, a little bit of history. The town of Plover submitted a petition to change Chapter 17 zoning code to allow shipping containers as a conditional use in the rural residential, urban residential, and low-density residential zoning districts. Currently, they are not a permitted use in any form, and that is to allow them as a permanent accessory structure, just like they would a shed, so they would follow the same standards. So like I said, they're petitioning for it to be a conditional use. They submitted the petition back in December, and it was brought forth to this committee on March 5th. And then it was sent back to staff and the town in order to get more input from the town so that they could provide input on what standards that they would want to see if the petition were to be approved. So previously, in your packet, you'll see a couple of things. One is the table that's currently in our ordinance. You'll see around in the red box, the 3 blue C's are what is proposed. Those would be the proposed change. Currently, like I said, they are not a permitted use in the UR, LDR, and RR zoning districts. Then the next one, you'll see the proposed changes in the actual ordinance as the language. This was the original one that was set forth at the March 5th ERC meeting as well. And this is what prompted some more discussion when it was sent back to staff. You'll also see the next one is a letter that we sent to each of the towns for their input. We did receive some input, and if you guys had any questions about that, it was included in your packets as well. The previous input before March 5th, and then input that we gained before today's hearing as well. So it'd be on page 62 of your packets. This is the new proposed language. It was approved by the town of Plover. They reviewed it at their March 12th town board meeting, and they did approve to make an amendment to their petition. So you'll see everything in blue. These are the new standards that would be added. And then we did work with the definition of a shipping and storage container to exclude things like semi-trailers, box trucks, box vans, any portion thereof, and then similar items that would typically be on axles that people have dropped onto the ground now. So is there any questions from the committee for me?
I'll start. So the feedback from the towns was a bit of a mixed bag, right?
Correct. The previous input that we got, you'll see there's kind of 2 sections. There's things that I broke up that were presented to us or given to us before the March 5th meeting that were presented at that time. And then when you scroll down, I do have some more that were added from the before this hearing. I believe we had maybe 5 or 4 out of the 18 county zone towns comment.
For the second round, right?
For the second round, correct.
Yeah. Were there any towns that commented in the first round and the second round, and did their opinions change if they did?
The town of Knowlton did disapprove of it in the first round, but they did approve of it in the second one with the new standards. I did call all 18 towns in early April to make sure that they were all going to hear it and then for them to submit those comments to us so I could bring them forth to you. And what's presented here, town of Frankfort, Hewitt, McMillan, and Knowlton were the comments we did receive.
Okay. Any other questions for Garrett? Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you. I'm just wondering to myself, okay, let's say I got a container like this. I went through the conditional use process and everything. And you wanted to have it like a fence by it or something where it's covered so people don't see it when they drive by or whatever. How long do I have to do that? And how do you monitor that? How do you police that?
So the Board of Adjustment could put a time frame on it. So these permits have to go through the Board of Adjustment. They're not just issued through our office at this point. The town would see each individual one of these, and then the Board of Adjustment would see it. Staff could put recommendations forward to the Board of Adjustment to consider as conditions. The Board of Adjustment, like I said, can put conditions on that as far as establishing a time frame for that to be taken care of. And then we would have to regularly check that at that point to make sure that it meets the conditional use permit requirements.
Go ahead, Supervisor.
Thank you. Let's say after 5 or 6, 8 years or whatever, that fence is getting in disrepair, people don't really think about that. So is that being watched for, and also people build buildings and they kind of fall down too. I get that.
Right.
So I'm just
Right.
want an exclamation on that.
So everything is, as far as, keeping up on those things and violations, stuff like that, those are all complaint-based. So if somebody were to complain and say, well, so-and-so's fence around their shipping container is decrepit and needs to be taken care of, we would then go and inspect that, and then they would have to repair that fence and bring it back to the standard that was set by BOA. And if they refuse to do that, BOA could revoke their conditional use permit, and then they would have to either come back for a new one or remove the shipping container altogether.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Marilyn has a question that, just asking, unzoned. I'm assuming, I remember, or my recollection is that unzoned townships are not part of this. It was just.
That's correct. This is only in the towns that have adopted Marathon County zoning.
Supervisor Kroll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted a clarification on the purpose of the private sewage code. What is the purpose of this if it's not going to be for any human habitation?
Oh, go ahead if you want.
Jacob, I can answer that, but I think I have to be
I do
sworn
have
in
to
first.
swear you in. So, Shad, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, go ahead.
So since this is going to be looked at as an accessory structure, we see a lot of accessory structures in Marathon County that some people like putting a bathroom in or a sink in. So anything with internal plumbing needs to actually have a sanitary system associated with it to make sure that we're capturing or handling that waste properly. That was just suggested to put in there because if somebody was going to convert one of these structures into an accessory structure that had like a wash sink or, we've seen some pretty interesting designs that have come through, but that's to accommodate for that to make sure if they are going to put interior plumbing in it, at least it references that they will need to get a sanitary permit for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also a follow-up. I guess I'm curious if there's any foundational requirements that would be needed to place one of these structural containers, if there has to be footings or foundations in place.
So as far as footings and foundation, that's a uniform dwelling code requirement. We do not administer the uniform dwelling code at the county level. Each town has their own building inspector that they contract to administer it to the extent that they feel the town needs to. So as far as that, for foundation or what it's set on, those requirements are not ours to take care of.
Supervisor Seefeld and possibly Supervisor Draybeck? We'll see, maybe by the time we get to there. Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not going to be in favor of this for the simple reason I had calls from the township of Elderon. And as you see in the packet here about the containers.
So Supervisor Seefeld, I just want to clarify, do you have a question for Garrett or Shad at this time?
No.
Because we are not deliberation yet. Okay. Okay. No, I want to call you out. I just process. Okay. Supervisor Draybeck, do you have a question?
Yeah, I don't want to deliberate.
Oh, you want to deliberate?
No, I don't want
okay.
to, yeah.
All right. Go ahead, sir.
I'm just wondering if the zoning administrator comes out and looks at this, that's what it says in there, right? That the zoning administrator comes out and looks at the place or where they place it. Am I correct on that?
Him or his designee, yes.
Designate, yeah, whatever
But yes.
word that is.
So-
Is there any, at that time, do they communicate with the town at all, so the town and them can work this through at the same time?
Yep.
As I'd like to see the local control there yet.
Right.
To a point. I don't want to just see, I want to see their input coming in.
Right. So in conditional use permits, a resolution is sent forth to the town for them to discuss. And that's their opportunity to place forth conditions or recommend that the Board of Adjustment either deny or approve. It cannot be, a denial or an approval is neither does not stop the conditional use from being granted, or it does not guarantee that it will be granted. Wisconsin Act 67 states that a Board of Adjustment is required to issue the conditional use permit if the applicant meets all of the applicable standards. There is like a 30-day appeal period. If the town so chooses to go forth and appeal that decision by the Board of Adjustment, likewise for the applicant or anybody else aggrieved by it. As far as once that is approved, they would have to get then a general permit to place that structure there. The conditional use permit merely gives them, it becomes possibly a permitted use, and then now the Board of Adjustment is granting approval for you to now use that property to have a shipping container for an accessory structure. They would have to get a separate permit, just a general structure permit, and then they would have to meet all the setbacks for a regular accessory structure. And at that point, either they call us when it's been placed, and then their whatever conditions or screening or anything that needs to be done is put in place. They call us when that's complete, and we come out and do an inspection, or that permit for them to put that shipping container and get that screening up is good for 2 years. We wait until the expiration of that if we don't hear from the applicant that it's been done.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say if I could add something too. So with a conditional use permit, we do have the applicants, they do submit the site plans to us, and those site plans are also sent to the township in which that's happening. So the town will have an idea of when they get that, the material that a condition, this is the plan for their conditional use, this is where the structure would go. So they have kind of a picture of where it would be, and then they can address any concerns that they may have. They could recommend to the Board of Adjustments that it's in a sensitive area, a fence along the south side would help screen it from the road, or they can recommend things like that during that period. So they do get a kind of a vision, I'll call it, the site plan associated with it to be able to make those determinations if they feel that something should be in place to help mitigate some of the challenges on the site.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, shipping container. So I'm assuming there is no wheels, no skirting, it's just the container that just gets dropped off.
That's correct. And I know when we had met with a couple of towns, they had some concerns early on about what, the definition, because some people have semi-trailers that are still on wheels, some have them are directly sitting on the ground, parts of box vans and stuff like that. So that's when we decided to edit the definition of storage container, and we eliminated that from the definition. So it specifically states to exclude things like the semi-trailer, box vans, box trucks, parts thereof, all of those things. So those are vehicles to our definition.
One other question. Someone has stated there's large print made in China, and is there writing on that? I mean, is it that
Right.
noticeable, or?
Well, and one of the standards that we came up with, and we worked with the town of Plover to make sure that they were amenable to it as well, because we did get a lot of comments from towns when we either met with them, when they sent us comments that writing on the side, they can be kept in disrepair, they're unsightly, they're an eyesore, those kind of things. So that's why we added a standard, the exterior shall be painted or sided in a manner to match the character of the use to which they are accessory, as well as the district that they are located in. So they should be kept up in an order, whether they're sided, painted, screened around, to match their district and the surrounding area.
Thank you.
Other questions? Supervisor Seefeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are these containers going to be taxable to the towns?
Yes, I spoke with, like I said, at March 5th, I spoke with Terry Vosberg of Hoffman Appraisals. I can't remember off the top of my head which towns in Marathon County he's the assessor for, but I did speak with him about whether they are taxable. So with assessing structures, it's based, the way that they look at it, according to Mr. Vosberg, is that these structures are based, their value, about what value they add to the property and area around it. If you have a neighborhood, he used, for example, that has $500,000 homes in it, and somebody drops a shipping container in it, it may not be worth or taxed as high because it's not adding as much to that property value. You know, if your mill rate is $17 per thousand and he puts $1,000 on it in that neighborhood, then it's $17. But he said if you have it on a piece of hunting land where you have, you know, a cabin and you want to store four-wheelers or stands or anything you want, you know, to have for your hunting, that value may go up. It may bring more value to that property because of the surrounding area that it is.
I'm sorry, I'll be quiet pretty soon. No, I'm like my train of thought just derailed. I guess what I was thinking through here is if having one and then having it have problems with it is, you know, what is the process? But never mind, I'll have to get my question back again. I lost it. So.
Okay.
All right, other questions? All right. Okay, so I think I might have had one too, but I think I might have lost it too, but that's all right. Okay, so staff will thank you. We'll go to public testimony. So for this one, I'm just going to ask, is anybody here to speak for item 5A4 for the text amendment changes to Chapter 17?
We do have someone online from the town of Plover who would like to speak in favor.
Okay.
Valerie Parker.
Name and address, if I remember correctly, right? Name and address for this, or is it just name and municipality? Name and municipality? Okay. So Valerie, if you'd state your name and municipality, and then I'll swear you in, please.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, Valerie Parker. I'm online representing the town of Plover in Marathon County.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. You can proceed with testimony. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, I'm
Thank you.
sorry. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, the reason this all started was because we do have some residents that had placed shipping containers on their properties. And the reason for the placement was to try and clean up their yards to get their stuff, you know, inside of a structure of some sort, so it's not just sitting out. While I personally don't think they're attractive, I'd rather look at that than garbage all over people's properties. And so in our town board, they are in support. I don't know if I said I'm the clerk for the town board, but they are in support of allowing the shipping containers, and we do support the suggestions made by the county CPZ department. And yeah, we totally agree that these containers should be painted to match their houses or just, you know, similarly. So yeah, you don't see the large China words spray painted all over or whatever else might be spray painted on it. But also for the containers to be located either on a side or on the rear side of the property so that they're not just right out in the roadway. And yes, and the CPZ is great as far as whenever there is a public hearing coming up on a property in our town, notifying us in advance so that we can talk about it at our town meeting and then share our comments to CPZ before it gets to the Environmental Resources Committee. And this also gives a good opportunity where, let's say we know there's a property that does have an issue. Maybe there are some special conditions that we would recommend to the county to place on that property before allowing the container. Because as long as the conditions are added ahead of time, then the applicant would have to meet those conditions in order to have it approved. Let's see. And yes, and as far as if a container is getting or is in disrepair or or if they do fence it and the fence is starting to get disrepaired, as they said, that would fall on a complaint basis. Although I would think that if the town noticed some of the properties getting disheveled, we'd probably say something as well. But we're hoping that you guys will consider this, as it is another option for people who are looking for a way to be able to clean up their properties, but are unable to build an actual building. I guess that's all I have to say. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Any questions for Valerie? All right, seeing and hearing none. Thank you for offering your testimony. All right. Anybody else wishing to speak for item 5A4? Speak for it, speak against it, speak as interested. Please identify yourself at this time. Calling once. Anybody wishing to speak on item 5A4, please identify yourself at this time. All right. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify for the zoning amendment changes, we'll now close the public hearing for the text amendment changes. Before we get too far into deliberations, I just want to say this, and I know I requested this in the past, and I'm going to request it again. I would like to delay this for a month yet. The one town in my district that's county zone did not provide feedback yet for this change. I would like their feedback before we proceed with an actual vote. So for the new people, towns have three options for zoning. They can either have no zoning, they can have town zoning, which that's their own town code that's administered by themselves, or they can have county zoning where they're under the county zoning code. The county essentially administers the code, all right? So I've got three towns in my district. Two of them have their own town zoning. One of them's got county zoning. I really want to hear from them before we make any changes to this. I will say, though, it looks like there has been progress because the one town changed their tune compared to the first round of changes, which is good. That was the point of making that change. So that's good to see. Was there anything else for deliberations today that people wanted to add? Supervisor Drabek and then Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remembered the question. I forgot. Can I ask that now?
I'm going to assume it's a clarifying question, so go ahead.
It is. Well, I just
Okay.
was wondering what they did if the people move. What is that? Does this conditional use permit stay with the container, or does it leave and they have to go get their own? Do they have to take the container with them? Questions like that. Just.
Yeah, I can address that a little bit. And there are several conditional use permits where the Board of Adjustments will put a expiration of some sort on the container or on the conditional use permit. For example, they could put a condition on there saying the conditional use permit is no longer valid once a change of ownership. But if the individual takes it over and there is no expiration on the permit, it would just be as long as they're in compliance with said permit. Otherwise, if they're not in compliance with that permit, the new owner would either have to, one, get in compliance with that permit, two, they could go back to the Board of Adjustments to try and amend the permit, or three, remove the structure.
Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Kroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to propose somewhat of an amendment, but maybe just get some feedback. Maybe you bring this back to all of the town associations, but I'm concerned about having the urban residential district as part of this amendment. If the storage containers are in tightly zoned areas, that might be a concern for neighbors if they can see this very prevalently. So maybe just, I guess you have some deliberation on that, some thought.
Have either of you heard any concerns regarding, I mean, that's the crux of the change here, right? That these are going to be offered in residential areas, right? Yeah. So do you have any other commentary to offer to that from what you've heard from the towns?
So I know we did have some concerns about like subdivision areas, and I believe that may have come from the town of Knowlton, if I'm correct. They had some concerns about shipping containers in like subdivision areas, and that beforehand there was nothing in the in the language that would protect those areas. But we did try and incorporate language, so if there was a subdivision as defined in our land division ordinance, the chapter 18, you wouldn't be able to have a shipping container in those areas. Now, just a little bit of clarification on those, that would have to be a subdivision, not necessarily a clump of residential lots is not necessarily considered a subdivision. It'd have to really meet the definition. I think the definition is also included in your packet. So it's any subdivision classified as a county, state, condominium, planned unit of development, or conservation plat. So we would have something on file saying that that subdivision was developed and they went through that process in order for it to be a subdivision. But I believe Garrett may have more on that as well.
Yeah, just a little more clarification on kind of the urban residential lots. So when properties are zoned, a lot of times, especially in a rural area, it's not just kind of the density of lots around them. It sometimes has to do with the lot size. So an urban residential lot, we do have some that are out in the country that are not surrounded, that are in subdivisions surrounded by ag. They're zoned that way because they are currently under that half acre. Whether they cut it out for whatever reason to add another principal residence next to one, or they broke it off from the farm, something like that. So just something to consider for the board or for the committee.
Anything else? Supervisor Ritter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe that the town of Plover has been quite patient with our postponing. I wouldn't be in favor of extending this, just staff has reached out to these towns on several occasions. If they can't get their act together and give us their opinion, then I believe they don't want their opinion to be heard.
Okay, other discussion? Supervisor Seefeld?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like I said before, I am not going to be in favor of this just because of the concerns that are in my district about it and what one of the townships that is zoned went through getting rid of the containers that were in our township. And they stress that they don't want containers back. So I am going to be voting against this if we do vote on it today. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I would add one comment. The reason why I want more feedback from that county zone town is because they had taken a position against allowing these in urban or in residential areas. So if I'm looking at data from my district, right, the last data point that I have is no. So if I were to vote today, I would not be voting in favor of this, right? I get it. I credit the town of Plover for being so patient with us. Typically, this doesn't get extended out to, well, I think they've been working with you all since last fall, correct, staff? Since December, yeah. I get it. I appreciate their patience. I would also add that if we were able to extend this out to next month and make a decision at next month's meeting, that does give us an opportunity to try and reach out again to those other towns, not just my town and my district, to try and see if they have additional feedback as well. So other thoughts? Supervisor Unger.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'm just surprised that, we didn't hear from quite a few of the townships.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a couple that make, reference situational type things in their townships, don't really want it. So is there any way to, if they're really adamant about not being part of, can they be excluded for the township, or would we have to,
Yeah.
approve it for a county? I'm just wondering or asking or.
That's a question for staff. I think I know the answer, but
So I will say, since they're under county zoning, it's very important that everybody follows the same essential code language. It would be very difficult. We would almost it would have to be separate codes for separate towns, and in that situation, that kind of defeats the purpose of county zoning. So I would really advise against anything like having one town have permission to do one thing when one has permission to do the other. It would be very challenging to regulate, and I would just really hesitate against that one.
Other discussion? Supervisor Drayback.
I would have no issue with postponing this a little bit because we have the newer people here. Maybe they want to study this out a little bit more. Maybe they want to hear from their constituents and stuff like that. So that would be just a thought on that. It can go either way, but
Okay.
I don't think after this much time, a little bit longer is going to hurt much.
Okay.
So
Further discussion? Anybody like to take any action on this item today? If not, I will close the hearing and we'll reopen it at next month's, at the next month's meeting. But I will ask, is there any action anybody would like to take today? All right. Seeing and hearing none, we will take this up at next month's meeting, and unless something catastrophic were to happen within now and next month's meeting, I do anticipate that we will have a vote at that meeting. All right. We are down to 5B, review and possible recommendations to County Board for its consideration, town zoning changes to pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 60.62 sub 3. We have 5B1, Town of Reeprock Wind Energy System Siting Ordinance. So, a couple things for the new members that are joining us. So, at least I want to make sure that I'm getting this correct. We are not under the public hearing system right now. This is a town-zoned town situation. Now, typically, what will happen for town-zoned towns that are administering their own code, whenever there are amendments that are made to the code, they have to go to the county for approval. So 60.62 sub 3 sub A, I think it is. It says, in counties having a county zoning ordinance, no zoning ordinance or amendment of a zoning ordinance may be adopted under this section, which would be the zoning authority if exercising village powers under Chapter 60 of the statute, which would be for Wisconsin towns. Under the section, unless approved by the county board, this paragraph applies only in counties with a population of less than 485,000, and does not apply to a town that is withdrawn from county zoning. Last month, we were presented with this ordinance from the town of Reeprock, and the committee had some thoughtful discussion last month as far as what this commits the county to. You heard a little bit from public comment about wind energy or aspects of wind energy siting. And I just want to caution the committee and say, this is not a debate over wind energy. This is not what we're here to do. What this issue really boils down to is process and what the county is committed to. The county clearly has a role to play under 60.62 sub 3 sub A. When this was proposed, and because this was such a new area that towns hadn't previously regulated in when it came to zoning ordinances, the committee postponed the decision and asked some clarifying questions to our corporation counsel. Mike has done a lot of work within the last month in researching what that section means in Chapter 60, and I'm going to turn it over to him, and he's going to explain what he found out. So, Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the committee for the opportunity to take a look at this and dive in a little bit deeper. So I have had the opportunity to review the ordinance that was passed by the town of Reeprock. I've also reviewed the applicable state law. My analysis today, as Chair Langenhahn mentioned, is not about the underlying policy of regulating wind energy. That certainly can be part of your discussion, but my role is to look at process and legal authority. So what I began to look at was under that statute 60.62 subsection 3, with the county's requirement to approve a town-zoned town zoning ordinance, what does approval mean in that context? And, what is the committee actually looking at, what considerations do they have, then what are the legal and liability concerns related to approval. So given the rather novel nature of some of those questions, the lack of any guidance in any case law, and the possibility that perhaps these issues might have been addressed previously, I did reach out. I do phone a friend from time to time. In this case, I reached out to Andy Phillips, who is General Counsel for Wisconsin Counties Association. WCA actually agreed to direct Andy's team to look into the process questions, the scope of the county's review, and associated legalities with this particular ordinance. So there is a memorandum that I can share with the committee. It's on your screen as well. It's about 3 pages, but I'll just kind of emphasize and summarize it here because it's very similar to what my analysis was and is, with me adding some extra flavor to it. Chair Langenhahn outlined the statutory scheme that we have here. The framework is that the town has the ability to exercise zoning authority inherent to it under Wisconsin law. However, in a county with county zoning, the town has to have county approval to any town zoning ordinances and
Mike,
associated.
can I stop you for a second?
Yeah,
Is it possible to have some printouts of that so we can circulate that to the committee members? Thank you.
I'm certain that we can, yes. So in my review and the review from Atolis Law, which is the law firm that represents the Counties Association, we looked at what function is the county committee exercising when it approves or denies a particular town zoning ordinance. The function that you're exercising today is a legislative function. So you have pretty broad authority when reviewing a town ordinance under these circumstances. You have to ensure that you're following all the procedural and substantive due process requirements, which we have. We've properly noticed everything. The town properly passed their ordinance and sent it to us. Again, it's not my role to look at whether the ordinance is good policy, but I do have to look at the underlying legal basis. And if you read through that memorandum, it talks about the town's ordinance in particular and what you may wish to consider when deciding whether to approve or deny. In this case, there are some specific state laws that apply to local regulation of wind energy systems. The most important ones for this discussion from my end are 66.0401 and PSC 128. That's the administrative code that was created and adopted as a result of 660401. That statute, 660401 subsection 1M, prohibits towns, counties, villages, and cities from adopting any restrictions to wind energy systems that are more restrictive than the rules outlined in PSC 128, which is that administrative code chapter. So in looking at the town of Rietbrock's ordinance, there are multiple areas in their ordinance where there are specific definitions that are not at all referenced in the PSC code. There are some terms of the permit expiration and extension that exceed the regulations in PSC 128, requiring location of wells, a consent form from all participating residences. There are some shadow flicker limits that exceed those limits that are specified in PSC 128, and rules related to interference and stray voltage, lighting conflicts, and noise, sound decibels of noise. PSC 128 sets forth specific standards for what can be regulated, and the state law says you can adopt a local ordinance, but you can't exceed those standards. This local ordinance exceeds those standards. It's more strict than what the state law and state regulations permit. Accordingly, it's my opinion that the town is exceeding its legal authority to enact that ordinance. The town is surpassing the authority that the state has provided to the town by exceeding what's outlined in PSC 128. So again, in your deliberation about this ordinance, you're performing a legislative function. You have the authority to consider the underlying legality of the town ordinance in your deliberations. And I need to, as your counsel, caution you and advise you that approving an ordinance that exceeds the scope of the town's authority could subject the county to legal liability. Certainly, if an entity or an individual filed suit, I think it's likely that the county would be included in that suit if we approved the ordinance. Our involvement is limited, so our liability, I think, is limited. It is, at the end of the day, the town's ordinance, not the county's ordinance, but with our role in approval, I could see us being implicated in that. Additionally, just from a legal perspective, and not commenting on the underlying policy at all, but the policy of passing an ordinance that we know could be or is contrary to state law, I think has risk. It has the risk of creating that precedent. If we approve exceeding state law in this case, where does the line end? Where do we draw that line? What risks would that type of policy or precedent create? So I think the committee really needs to consider that. I would advise against adopting or approving an ordinance that we believe exceeds state law. It was the opinion from Atolis Law that it's likely that this town ordinance exceeds state law. That is my analysis and my opinion as well. So I'm definitely open to answering any questions you might have for me about the analysis from either me or the counties association, and any other questions that you might have.
Questions from the committee? Supervisor Sandelsky, I'll recognize you. Supervisor Sandelsky is not a member of the ERC, but is a member of the county board.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm looking at PSC 128.03 under the it's a public subdivision authority. A political subdivision may not place any restriction either directly or in effect on the installation or use of wind energy except by adopting ordinance that complies with the chapters 66.0401 state statutes and not more restrictive than this chapter. So I'll go and read the restrictions here. So under the 66.0411M, which is the political restrictions, so authority to restrict the systems is limited. No political subdivision may place any restriction either directly or indirectly in effect on the installation of the wind energy system that is more restrictive than the rules promulgated by the Commission under the 196.378. No political subdivision may replace any restriction either directly or in effect on the installation or solar energy system as defined in 13.48 or a wind energy system, unless, here's the stipulation that Corp Council didn't mention, unless the restriction satisfies one of the following conditions, which is serves as to preserve, to protect the public health and safety. And I believe I didn't do a ton of research on this ordinance, but I believe this is what this ordinance is for, is the health and safety. And that's the one thing we have to protect the public's health and safety. And so I'm going to do one more comment on the whole thing as far as this all goes. So as county board supervisors, we have a duty and an obligation to protect the safety and health of the citizens we serve here in Marathon County. As we have been hearing many times that the county, I guess I can refer to that, I already talked about that. So there are many devastating effects to the industrial wind complexes. I'm going to focus on the health and safety aspect, reason being this is the only jurisdiction the county has over this matter. May of 2023, the ERC committee, as you recall, there was an older gentleman who spoke about his firsthand experience about the devastating effects of the infrasound on his health, safety, and welfare. He spent thousands upon thousands trying to quiet his home down with no avail. Migraine, sleepless night, overall downgrade in health. The health and safety effects are wide and deep. The proposed wind turbines are 660 feet tall that are proposed here in Marathon County. And if you want a little approximation, Rib Mountain is 741 feet above landscape. None of the townships, villages, or cities in Marathon County have the equipment to fight these turbine fires. So if you have a fire, who's going to pay? Who's going to equip these townships to fight the fire? And to be honest, this is much.
Supervisor Sandelsky, question of process, right? Right. So how is the ordinance consistent with county process? And what is the legal question at play here, right? Because like I said, we're not here to get in the weeds about wind. We're not here to do that. We're here to talk about process, okay?
Okay. Well, that's what I was asking about under the 1M where it says that you can restrict, any jurisdiction of government can restrict as it serves to preserve, to protect the public's health and safety. That's why I was explaining under the safety of how detrimental this is to the health and safety of the people in the county.
Okay. So let me pose that question to Corp Counsel, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to be very clear. It is never my intention to hide the ball on anything. If I think that you have the authority or the town has the authority to do something, I will tell you in black and white. If I think they don't, I will tell you in black and white. I will not hide or not mention any portions of the statute. If you look at 660401 subsection 1M, there are two parts to that initial statute. No political subdivision may place any restriction, either directly or in effect, on the installation or use of a wind energy system that is more restrictive than the rules promulgated by the Commission under 196-378 4G sub B. That's the rules that are created in PSC 128. So the first part of that statute says a political subdivision cannot place any restriction that exceeds PSC 128. There's a second part of subsection 1M that no political subdivision may place any restriction either directly or in effect on the installation or use of a solar energy system or a wind energy system unless the restriction satisfies one of the following conditions. And as Supervisor Sandelsky outlined, protecting public health and safety is one of them, not significantly increasing the cost of the system or decreasing its efficiency is another, allowing for alternative systems of comparable cost and efficiency is a third. So you cannot, my read of this statute is that a town, a county, a city, or a village cannot exceed the limitations of PSC 128. It also cannot place any restrictions that on wind energy systems at all unless those restrictions hit one of those three benchmarks. But if there is a specific requirement under PSC 128, for instance, distance, shadow flicker, those types of things, there is no authority to exceed those regulations. And in effect, that's what portions of this town ordinance accomplishes.
So I want to add something there because I don't mean to oversimplify, but there's a period in between the first statement and the second statement. And that period is very important.
Yep. I guess that is a much simpler way to say what I was just saying. If I would have turned my lawyer off, I could have just said it that way. But yeah, that's a very good way of saying it.
Oh, I'm not an attorney either, but that first section is clear. No political subdivision may place any restriction, either directly or in effect, on the installation or use of wind energy system is more restricted than the rules promulgated by the Commission. Under that statute, if you go to that statute, it references the Wind Siting Council, and then, of course, the Corp Council's point, PSC 128. So that's two separate sections, and that first section holds. It holds for everything. So, do you have anything else to add, Mike?
Not unless there are any more questions.
Questions from the committee? Because it's clear, they can adopt a local ordinance, but that first section is extremely important. It says, whatever ordinance they adopt, it cannot be more restrictive than PSC 128. That's the point. All right, other questions? So Corp Counsel, why don't you outline what our options are?
Sure. So you're at the stage where you're being asked to either approve or not approve this particular town ordinance. So it's a legislative function. You can approve it. I've outlined my concerns, but that's ultimately a policy decision for you. And if you recommend approval, that will go to the county board. You can also recommend that this not be approved, which then it would not go to the county board. Those are your options, barring any other procedural action that you might want to take. But those are it's an up or down. Do you approve? Do you not approve? Approval would move it forward to the full board.
Okay, other questions, otherwise we'll enter deliberation here. Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, besides the word approve, is there any other word you can put in there? The motion to, let them adopt, or, something on that order?
I understand exactly where you're coming from with that question, and that's part of what I've been looking into is, what is the function of the county here? This is a town-zoned town. They've adopted their zoning ordinance, but the statute uses the word approve. So the statute is saying, county, you have to approve this for it to go into effect. So I don't see any way around approving. Now, what the effect of that approval is that it allows the town to put it into effect. Whether or not it exposes the county to any substantial risk of litigation, I don't know, but I think it's possible.
So in other county zoning issues, or what we've had was if the county board were to deny a zoning change under the county system, they could still override the county under that system. Is there a similar process for this?
There's not. There is a process for a town to withdraw from county zoning, which would take it out of this approval process. It wouldn't require county approval. Previously, before March 30th of this year, that wasn't even an option in most counties. It was only an option in really 2 counties. There was a recent law that was passed that extended that to all counties. However, it's a very lengthy process. There's no action can be taken for 5 years from the time that statute was put into effect, which was, again, this year. So it's not something where there's a very easy response from the town.
Other questions from the committee? Okay, yes, Supervisor Drabek.
I guess I had another question about the Public Service Commission, if I understood it right, was supposed to get together, or they were supposed to meet in 2019 and redo all the setbacks and stuff. They haven't been really doing what they're supposed to be doing. So what is our response? Just let them do whatever they want then, or what?
So again, there's a line here as far as process and versus policy. You are correct that the state has a process that they're supposed to go through in order to update PSC 128. I don't think anybody is disputing the facts that PSC 128 should be updated to reflect the current modern era. Nobody's disputing that. It is a shame that the state has put us in a situation like this. It's very unfortunate. But that still does not take away our responsibility to uphold the state laws as they were written. I think the laws need to change, but we have to uphold those laws while they're currently written. So, other questions? All right. Deliberation. Thoughts, discussion. Anybody like to make a motion? Supervisor Seifelt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You were stating, it's a shame that the state laws hasn't brought up to date. Is there anything in the, for future process for like Marathon County or this committee to proceed to have them try to update this? Do we have any way of putting any pressure on them or not?
I believe that was something that we asked in that letter that we sent to the state last year. So for the new folks, I drafted a letter concerning this issue, recognizing that it was a very important issue, one that our residents have been asking about, and sent it off to the state. I don't know what the process currently is as far as how far they are along with updating PSC 128. I don't know. I do know that there was there was a bill that was introduced towards the end of this current legislative session, asking for more local control in regards to the wind sighting issue. That is something that I intend to write a resolution for in support of and bring it to this committee next month so that there's more local input in this process. But as far as currently, it's a state system that we really don't have any control over. The other thing I want to mention to this group, and it's something that I do struggle with in regards to the legal liability, and I respect where the town of Reprock came from here. I'm not here to debate the purpose of the ordinance amendments that's in front of you right now, right? I do have some concern in that if this were to get challenged and the county were to end up in court, the county's obviously going to have legal bills. We'll probably have higher insurance costs as time goes on because our insurance company is going to look at this and say, why did you adopt this? And I really don't think that's fair for the people that I represent in the towns of Marathon, Emmett, and Mosinee to have to pay for those costs. I don't think that's fair to my taxpayers that I represent. Ray's looking very contemplative right now. What a first meeting for you two newbies. This is a tough one. Supervisor Seifelt?
I'll make a motion that we do not adopt the town of Reebock's resolution.
I'll second.
Motion has been made. There's a second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Motion carries, is not unanimous. Moving on to item C, review and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. We have none. D, review and possible action. We have none. 6, educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports, and committee discussion. A, department updates, conservation planning and zoning, park rec and forestry, conservation planning and zoning. 1, review of standing committee related ordinances under section 204, including missions, duties, and responsibilities and jurisdictions. So here is where I want to introduce our two members here because their membership is specified in our ordinances. So we have Maryland and Tom, right? Who are going to, at some point soon, be our two Wisconsin Towns and Villages Association rep, and then our farming interest representative. So if you all want to introduce yourselves, go ahead right now, but I didn't want to completely ignore you throughout this meeting, and you all have been very patient with us so far. I appreciate that.
I have represented this committee since it was created, probably 15 to 17 years ago. And I have seen a lot of things going on, and I think it's a very worthwhile committee, and it's one that's very necessary to represent all of Marathon County. And if I could have spoke today, I would have, but I can't until it's official.
We know Maryland.
Tom, go ahead.
My name is Tom Miller from Mill Trim Farms in Athens. We're a dairy farm. and looking forward to seeing what this is all about. It's been interesting today.
I bet.
And he's in the town of Johnson, which we really like.
Tyler Johnson's getting a lot of influence very quickly on the board. I don't know about that. Very good. Okay. Yeah, staff, Lori, if you want to kick things off, go ahead.
Hello all, again, my name is Lori Miskimmons. I'm the Director of Conservation Planning and Zoning, and I will start by talking a little bit about what Chapter 2 says related to the Environmental Resources Committee. I will be asking Administrator Leonard to fill in where I miss anything, as well as members of my staff. I do want to apologize in advance. You will see in the slides, you've seen in the rules, that there are 3 departments that primarily have reporting relationships with the ERC. The Solid Waste Department and the Parks and Forestry Department could not be here today due to illness and conference, so we are going to have them at next month's meeting to explain a little bit more. So we will need to skip over the solid waste item in the agenda today. But as it relates to the ERC, you guys get the exciting job of leading and talking about policy recommendations related to environmental resource initiatives within Marathon County. And in particular, as it relates to the strategic plan, you're looking at monitoring program outcomes, discussing policy with us, and making those policy recommendations to the county board to make progress towards the outcomes in the strategic plan that the county has adopted related to environmental initiatives. Again, the 3 departments that you have oversight or policy guidance are Conservation Planning and Zoning, Parks, Recreation and Forestry, and Solid Waste. So I think most often you get the pleasure of seeing Conservation Planning and Zoning here, but you do see Parks, Rec and Forestry quite often, and Solid Waste as well. You have several other committee relationships as well. I think as we come across these in the next 2 years, we can dive in a little deeper in terms of what those relationships are to each of the committees. I myself cannot speak in depth to the first 4 on the list because they are related to Parks, Recreation, and Forestry or Solid Waste. But my department also does work with the Metallic Mining Committee, the Board of Adjustment, the Marathon County Land Information Council, the Wausau MPO, and the Wisconsin Land and Water Association. So as those committees interface with the ERC, we'll be bringing you updates or things that they may be discussing forward to you all as well.
And I think at this time, I would just highlight Supervisor Ritter, if you'd want to explain your appointments for those relationships at the bottom there, I think that would be worthwhile.
Yeah, I am, not only am I on ERC, I am also a member of the Board of Adjustment, which works in a lot of similar areas that we do here, but different. We do more of the conditional use permits and variances. Last summer, I was also appointed to the Board of Directors for Wisconsin Land and Water. Wisconsin Land and Water is a great group that they educate the county conservationists. They do lobbying for county conservation. So this is kind of a state level. The state is broken up into 8 zones, and I represent the North Central zone. So it's a great opportunity to get Marathon County to have a voice in a state-run organization.
Also, go ahead.
I want to do one more thing to talk about cross committee relationships. So Supervisor Seefeld, why don't you talk about Park, Rec, and Forestry, and then I believe you and Supervisor Unger serve on EEDC as well. Yep. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Chair Longenon stated, I am on the Forest Recreational Committee. I chair that committee, and we have just had our meeting this afternoon at 1, and we report to anything that comes up that needs to be done with the consideration of ERC. We bring this to this board, or to this committee, I should say. I have some good news from the forestry department. We put out 5 bids this afternoon for forestry, and we had 31 people bid on those contracts. So the highest went to the highest bidders, which it amounted
Lowest bidders. Right? Lowest bidders?
highest bidder.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not used to the county selling things, right? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Did I say lowest?
No, you said highest. You're good.
Okay. Which those contracts will revenue $365,000 to help with the county. And they went out and planted 59,000 red pine out at 9 Mile on the 15th and 16th of April. 9 people planted these red pines all by hand at 6 feet apart and got paid 2 cents a plant to put these in. So, but the revenue that did come from the white pines that were planted in 1940, first was coming off at 1970, was the first contracts that went out. And now that plantation is gone, and now we're rejuvenating it, but those brought in about $7,500 per acre in revenue towards our for the county. But at a cost of replant was about $570 an acre. So the revenue is pretty good in the timberstry industry, but not the Langon anymore. But I do, Supervisor Unger and myself do come from ERC because there is 2 people from EED that sits on this board. So, but the forestry department is doing well right now. Thank you.
Supervisor Unger, do you have anything to add? Okay, sounds good. And I think Supervisor DeBrew, were you appointed to the Land Information Council, if I remember correctly? Yep. So the reason I bring all that up is, and staff have got the rest of their information to go through, but there is a lot of cross work that we do amongst all these committees, which is really good that that information ultimately ends up at the ERC. So in a lot of ways, we're able to draw from that knowledge from Park and Forestry, EEDC, maybe what goes on at Land Information Council, what's going on at the state level with Land and Water. We're very blessed to have all those relationships to meet up all here at the ERC. So that's the point I wanted to make here. Sorry, Lori, go ahead.
No, actually, that was kind of where I was going to, but I did want to highlight that I think predominantly you will see stuff coming forward from the Forestry Rec Committee, County Forest Citizens Advisory Committee, County Park Commission, and Solid Waste Management Board. Less often are we hearing from the other committee relationships. As it relates to the Board of Adjustment, the Chair Gibbs does appoint the Board of Adjustment, and as Supervisor Ritter mentioned, that is to hear variances, conditional use permits, and appeals related to our ordinances that we oversee. I think as it relates back to the ERC, sometimes from those cases come forward opportunities to discuss with you all something we may need to change in our code. That's predominantly how that comes over from the Board of Adjustment. That we find that it's time to change our code because something's been identified through the Board of Adjustment that might need addressing. I think there is opportunity for us to bring forward more information to you all about what the Marathon County Land Information Council is working on. I don't actually think we have brought anything forward in the last 2 years. So we'll have an opportunity to work with you and bring more information to the ERC. The MPO, the Wausau Metropolitan Planning Organization, the reason that is on there is because of the sewer service area planning. We have not updated that since 2017 and probably won't be looking to update that anytime soon because it's kind of driven by growth in the metropolitan area and that it's just not at the point where we need to look at expanding that boundary. And we will be bringing forth lots of things that happen with the Wisconsin Land and Water Association as well. So. As it relates to your roles and responsibilities, I'm going to ask our county conservationist, Kirsty Heidenreich, to speak for a couple minutes to your role as the Land and Conservation Committee for the state. So.
Thank you. I will keep this very brief because I could talk about this for hours and I know you're all already exhausted. So way to stick with it. I just had to very briefly say how excited I am to eventually have Tom and Marilyn added into the committee here. Our conservation department does work with Miltram Farms very frequently, and it has certainly been one of the honors of my career to work with a farm that truly understands how to build a community around what they're trying to make happen through agriculture and the community. So I really value that partnership and want you all to know that it's a partnership that's very valued by our department as well. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do on the committee. And Marilyn, you are just an icon. So I'm glad that you are going to continue to serve. I know many of you, but some of you I don't know yet, but I know that many of you do have either personal or professional interests related to safeguarding our natural resources here in this county. And so I do consider it an honor to work with you. And I also want to let you know that in our conservation department, we do talk about more than just manure. I feel like I am constantly talking to you all about manure, or to the county board about manure, and I've gained a variety of nicknames like the Manure Princess, the Poop Queen, all this stuff, but I promise we deal with more than manure. We just happen to have a lot of it in this county. Western Marathon County and Eastern Clark County is the highest concentration of dairy farms in the world. So, we deal with 650 million gallons of manure, so we kind of are forced to become experts on it, and we've had lots of good conversations about it. I'm hoping that at a future date, I will be able to talk with you all in a little bit more depth about your role as a land conservation committee. All 72 counties in Wisconsin have a land conservation department, and every county also has a land conservation committee. So ours happens to be called the Environmental Resources Committee, but it's often referred to as an LCC, or a land conservation committee in Wisconsin. And you are governed by Chapter 92 of state statutes. That's Wisconsin's soil and water conservation laws. So you are the guardians of those standards and of those laws in our county. So it is a huge responsibility. And together as a land conservation department and a land conservation committee, I view us all together as being the boots on the ground implementers of those soil and water standards here in this county for our citizens to safeguard our natural resources. And you really are a key player in the natural resources arena through your work on this committee. I do feel like it is important for you to be very knowledgeable about the workings of what our land conservation department is doing, because without knowing what we're doing in our department and what our goals are, we aren't going to be able to work hand in hand to get some of these action items done together. We do operate under a land and water resource management plan, so I'm hoping at some time this summer we'll have a little bit more time to sit down and go through those goals. Oftentimes you'll find that in these meetings there's a lot of zoning and a lot of other policy making, so sometimes we don't have as much time to talk about conservation, the most fun topic, compared to the others. So hopefully we can sit down and dive into some of that together, but please also know that I am always available for you to stop in. We can have a cup of coffee or whatever, or if you really want to experience land conservation for yourself, you are more than welcome to come out in the field with us, go to a farm or two, meet some of our farmers, come in and talk about our land and water resource management plan, that would truly be a treat. So thank you, and I look forward to working with you all.
Okay. Thanks, Kirsty. So as it relates to the second bullet, you also get to act as the Planning and Zoning Committee pursuant to state statutes. There are several that you have oversight of, and our department has responsibility for implementation in the county. Shad Harvey is our land resources manager and zoning administrator. So as we approach these topics, whether it's ordinance updates, rezones, or anything like that, you will be hearing a lot more about how those ordinances or those statutes interface with the work we're doing or what's before us to approve. And as Kirsty said too, if you have questions, you want to learn more about anything we do, please do feel free to reach out to our department. We can offer more education on rezones too in the future, if that would be something the committee wants to hear, or if somebody just wants to talk through a rezone with us before it comes before the committee, we can kind of explain the process more. You also will get the chance to work on the county's comprehensive plan in the next 2 years and the strategic plan. So right now, this strategic plan is set to sunset at the end of December of 2024. So I think in the coming months, we'll be working with the committees to determine what the next strategic plan looks like. And sometime between now and February of 26, we are hoping to update our entire comprehensive plan as well. We'll talk a little bit more about the strategic plans that are, or the strategic plan outcomes that are assigned to this committee in just a minute for right now. Some of the fun work we get to do, we get to talk a lot about different policies that are of concern to our community. So right now, in the last several months, we've talked a lot about groundwater, and we believe we'll be continuing to bring that discussion back to the ERC to talk about actions and policy the county board may want to consider related to our groundwater plan that we are in the middle of doing an update for. In the very near future, we plan to have somebody in to discuss some of the results we're seeing from the groundwater testing we've been doing across the county. Okay. So the two objectives within the current strategic plan that this committee has overview of are Objective 5.2 and 6.3 to promote sound land use decisions that conserve and preserve natural resources in decisions with economic development and growth, and to protect and enhance the quantity and quality of potable groundwater and potable surface supplies. So we will be bringing you updates as to how we are progressing and meeting the outcomes related to these two strategic plan objectives, and discussion too in terms of policy or other things that could help us possibly move the needle on some of these outcomes. And then you'll also be getting into the conversation probably more towards the end of summer, end of year, about what you want the next strategic plan to look like and what those priorities will be and outcomes related to those priorities. Administrator Leonard or Supervisor Longenhahn, did you want to add anything else about the ERC at this point before I jump into CPZ?
No, but the other priority, I thought, unless my timelines are messed up here, but when do we do the comprehensive zoning review?
Yeah, yes. So in the next 2 years, we will be doing a comprehensive zoning code update. We are to have that updated by February of 26 as well.
Okay.
So every 10 years, we do open up the zoning code for a more. We will bring forth text amendments to you periodically. We often look at it once a year just to evaluate what changes are needed. And as you saw today, the town of Plover had brought forth, they are allowed to do that as a county zone town. They can bring forth a text amendment change. I believe we have another one that's coming up in the next 2 months as well that's been brought forth. And so as that happens, we bring those forth and we open up Chapter 17 for considered revisions. But our code also says that every 10 years we will do a comprehensive update that allows the county zone towns who have opted into county zoning to determine if they want to continue to be in county zoning. So a town can opt into county zoning at any point that they want, but they right now can only opt out every 10 years.
So maybe one thing to add there, how many towns do we have that are county zone, town zone? I think we might have 1 or 2 that are unzoned, or?
I don't know how many we have that are unzoned.
Yeah.
Oh, we have one.
I got to do the math in my head. I'm going to give that.
So right now, we have 18 counties in town zoning. The remaining are either town zoned or non-town zoned. I also don't know the exact number, but.
Sure.
I think it's 14 town zoned, and then the difference is.
Yeah, that's pretty close, yeah.
The thing I wanted to communicate to the committee is that it's more than just a handful. That's what I want to communicate. So that was the only thing I had to add there. So, Mr. Leonard, did you have anything to add?
Nothing on the roles and responsibilities. I think when we get to, I might have something to add when we get to areas of focus during the last term and what might be kind of on the horizon for this term.
Okay. So go ahead, Lori. Thank you.
So again, you'll get a quick presentation from each of the departments that you have a relationship with. As I mentioned, Solid Waste and Parks and Rec could not be here today. So, but for CPZ, we promote thoughtful and deliberate use of our resources, and we do that through a variety of things, working with ERC and the county on policy, but we also work a lot with community engagement and collaborative partnerships. So this collective effort, we believe, is helping us really promote that thoughtful use of our resources in Marathon County to make us a healthy people, economy, and environment. We do pride ourselves a lot on working with our community groups and partnerships that we're building with the towns, the farmers, the landowners. So we spend a lot of time and we take pride in good customer service at CPZ for sure. I always steal Administrator Leonard's that the county does everything from A to Z. Well, CPZ does everything from A to Z as well. We have everything from airport easements to zoning. Our departments cover everything from administrative services, who our support staff who keeps us up and running with the budget. I did want to mention Morgan Arnold, our accountant, who is here today. She actually is here because she just started with conservation planning and zoning, and so we're giving her an orientation to some of the work we do and the things that she's going to need to help me with as it relates to the budget later this fall. So that is why we did invite the accountant here today as well. We have conservation services, land information, and geo services, and zoning and regulatory services. There are so many services, like I said, as we introduce them throughout this session, we'll take a little time to explain a little bit more about what we're doing or what we're reviewing. Our department is me as one director. I have 4 managers managing each of those 4 areas, and we have 27 full-time staff. We also utilize volunteers and community engagement groups to take our budget further and our work further as well. One of the things that happened in the last session was that real property listing assessments and parcel mapping moved from the treasurer's office to conservation planning and zoning. So that's why our full-time staff has grown some in the last couple of years.
I was going to add a point there that I had a member of the public, not a constituent of mine, but a member of the public call me a couple of years ago during budget talks and said, well, why did CPZ's budget grow that year? And I said, or I looked into it and I said, well, the only reason we grew is because we inherited those 2 positions from the treasurer's office. I would say generally that the budget doesn't grow tremendously. I mean, even for CPZ, what is it? 66% of the funding for CPZ is grant funding, or what is that number?
No, we're about 40-60, I believe.
40-60, I'm sorry, okay. But still, we do a lot.
Don't quote me on that. But.
Well, yeah, but I remember that was a big discussion during the budget talks last year as far as what is the optimal relationship with this department and the tax levy. And I would say is that we are very fortunate to have such great managers and that we don't have as much of an impact on the levy compared to other departments. We do a lot with what we have, so. Sorry, go ahead, Lori or Lance, whoever. I need to stop interrupting. I'd like to get home before midnight.
That's great. Yeah, I think we do leverage a lot of state and federal grants to round out our budget so that we can reduce our impact on the levy where possible, so, and expand the services. Other partnerships and policy relationships, I'm not going to go through the whole list because there are a lot, because CPZ does have a lot of responsibilities related to state statutes. We do work with a lot of state and local agencies as well as it relates to developing ordinance updates or policies. So you'll see us come before you, possibly with our shoreline ordinance will be coming before you sometime this year. And you'll hear us mention that we have to work with Wisconsin DNR on those approvals as well. So there's things that they have oversight because we're the implementation arm for them as it relates to that ordinance, so they have oversight in some of those changes as well. So we'll explain that again as we go through it. Some of the things at Conservation Planning and Zoning also, besides taking them to the ERC, we have things that we take before Public Safety, Infrastructure, the Transportation Coordinating Committee, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Land Information Council, and the Metallic Mining Committee. So the things most often you see us here for, so the things that you'll get familiar are the rezones. I think the next slide says we had 64 rezones in the last 2 years. So like Supervisor Longenhahn said, it's usually between 1 and 5 every month, and then town rezones are also probably 1 to 2 every month as well.
64?
But that's what we. We also will be bringing ordinance updates as needed throughout the next 2 years. We have 7 ordinances at Conservation Planning and Zoning that we have responsibility for. Fee schedule updates, we did go through with the last ERC quite an extensive analysis and looking at our fees that we charge fees for within the department, but those are always up for discussion if we need to look at those again and see if we're recovering enough for the work we're doing. We also bring a lot of policy and discussion before you related to the implementation of the Land and Water Resource Management Plan. And again, we come before you to talk about guidance and direction on our programs and policies related to your duties, related to our duties, the strategic plan, all those things. Some of the things we did address in the last 2 years, and this is just a partial list, and I'll definitely let Kirsty and Shad add anything else that I've forgotten at this point, but some of the big things we did in the last 2 years is we reestablished what's called the McDevco loan program. That is related to failing private on-site wastewater treatment systems that we are trying to get replaced within Marathon County per state statute. So in 2018, the county board did approve funds through the environmental impact funds to create a loan program for homeowners so that they would have a low interest way to borrow money to replace those systems. Because of COVID, there were some delays in getting it off the ground. We were able to get it off the ground successfully last year. We have actually loaned out $150,000 to date, so we're doing pretty well, and still have, I believe we have 10 loans that have been approved and another 8 that are in pending right now, and probably another dozen or so that are in the inquiry stage. So it is actually starting to take off. We are seeing systems replaced because of that loan program.
I want to quickly highlight those last two because those were great moves by this committee. Years and years ago, way before I had any interest in local government, probably when I was in elementary school, right? There were a series of power lines that went through this county from American Transmission Company. We had some very good leaders in this county at that time that were able to negotiate with those with the ATC company and essentially reach a settlement of like this annual payment that they would make to the county, and those funds would be used for environmentally minded projects. We have used those funds over the years for various things, but those two down there I think are really great because the aerator replacement, we were able to assist the DNR, though that was the DNR's responsibility at the end of the day, but we lent a helping hand to replace the aerators out at the Big Oak Plain. Some of you might remember, again, way before my time on this board, there was the fish kill out at the Big Oak Plain in 2010 or 2011? 09? Thank you, Supervisor Drayback. 09 really was a stark picture for the county at the time. There was a remediation plan that was put into place, and of course, as part of that remediation plan, these aerators were required. DNR fell behind. We were able to use that EIF money to fund the replacement here for an environmentally minded project. That last one down there, I still stand by this. I do believe that was Supervisor Drayback's idea way back when the Wisconsin Fund was being discussed as far as it being axed from the state budget. He had the idea to make a revolving loan fund with those EIF funds so that we could get those POUT systems replaced so that, we end up finding people because they can't afford to replace their systems. And there's a broader economic concern with that one too, because if you can't get those systems replaced, how the heck are you going to sell your house, right? Those two down there, I got to applaud past members of this committee for funding those two, because the other excellent thing about those two, I don't think any Supervisor or Administrator Leonard, sorry, I could be wrong, but I don't think there was any impact to the levy because of those two projects, right?
Certainly not with respect to the POUTS program that we're utilizing McDevco fund.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
McDevco for, because that was
environmental impact funds,
EIF.
yeah.
But even the aerator replacements, that was primarily funded with EIF dollars. So, I mean, you're looking at staff timing at that, right? I mean. And we got a DNR grant. Oh, and we got a DNR grant. So regardless, probably no impact on the levy, right? Which is fantastic for us. All right, sorry. I don't want to keep being a cheerleader.
Hey, we don't mind it at all.
I want to go home.
We've really enjoyed all this work that we've been doing. So, the other thing, we've been increasing our education with town-zone towns especially. That was something that came out of the last strategic plan update, was how we could work both with the county zone and the town-zone town. So we've been trying to increase those events and get information out and try and be a resource for the entire county. We brought forth several ordinance updates as well, some minor, some major. You'll continue to see those again through the next 2 years. We were able to launch the update of the Farmland Preservation Plan that will finish this year. It is required that that be updated every 10 years, and it is important to making sure that our farmers can continue to participate in the farmland preservation credits and get those important credits. We also launched the groundwater plan update, which I believe has not been touched since 2009 or 2006? I can't remember. But this county board did approve through the environmental impact funds again as part of that to fund that update and provide for up to 1,000 well tests for private well owners. So we have almost achieved that goal in getting 1,000 wells across the county tested, and that's going to help us understand what's going on with our groundwater throughout the county. So we had a big data gap there, so that's really helped us fill that gap. As I mentioned, we had 64 rezones. That might be light. We might have missed a couple. I'm not sure. So Supervisor Longenhan mentioned the aerator replacement at the Big O Plain. That's going to be vital to helping the water and fish health out there, and we'll be keeping you up to date as that actually takes place. And then also by statute, we are required to have a maintenance program for our private on-site wastewater treatment system. We were required to achieve that by 2026. We're actually a year ahead of schedule, and all of our systems will be brought in by 2025 to our maintenance program, so that we're making sure those systems are getting properly maintained and not impacting our groundwater. And that, I think, the staff. So I think we've all introduced ourselves, but the primary staff you will work with the ERC include myself, Kirsty Heidenreich, our county conservationist, Shad Harvey, our land resources manager, Garrett Poggle, who's our land use specialist. You'll get very familiar with him. He does all our rezones. Teal Fixon is a land use analyst who sometimes does come before the committee, especially as it relates to non-metallic and metallic mining issues. And Elijah Schwanek is our on-site wastewater specialist. So as it relates to our private on-site wastewater treatment system, sometimes he may also be before the committee. And then Nicole Deloney is our administrative support staff for the ERC. So those are the people. You will probably most often get emails from her or myself. Yeah.
If I can just add, before you start talking about the items from going forward for next term, just want to highlight two things. One, Lori referenced, and it's a specific ordinance update. One of the ordinances that hasn't been touched, or even I think few people knew existed until a couple of years ago, was section 12.04 of our ordinances. It was adopted in 1995 and was in dire need of a refresh. And you'll hear more about it moving forward, but that's our assemblies ordinance, our large assemblies ordinance. We had a work group that CPZ led, a work group that was comprised of county supervisor representatives from this committee, the Public Safety Committee, and the Infrastructure Committee. We still need to take that through the county board process. We weren't able to wrap that up last term, but a lot of good work has been done on that, so we'll revisit that. And then last, which was something that I think was novel, because again, it is something we haven't seen in a while, and that is we had a series of requests from entities, private entities, for industrial revenue conduit bonding, which you would rightly say, what is that? Just like a lot of us did when we first saw those late at the during last term, and it's under Wisconsin Statute 66.1103. But each of the entities that approached us were actually dealing with one of CPZ's areas of expertise, I think that was said before, and that is the management of manure. So manure digesters were each of the, specifically farms and organizations affiliated with them, approached the county to have the county authorize the provision of conduit bonding either directly through section 66.1103 or through the Wisconsin, the Public Finance Authority through the state of Wisconsin. And I don't see those stopping. Essentially, it's an opportunity for those private entities to have access to low-cost capital that they might otherwise not have. Now, when the economy was really humming along and interest rates were exceedingly low and the county was borrowing money at 1.16%, private access to capital was still really good, so they could go out and do that on their own. Of course, the interest rate environment has changed, so my sense is that's what prompted the requests from these entities to look at it, as well as the incentives that exist at the federal level for the management of or the creation of renewable natural gas, which is really the outcome of these manure digesters, is they generate renewable natural gas, which if you don't know, there's a federal market that's created. It's called the RINs market, where those individuals can sell into the natural gas system, just like what we're talking about out at the landfill that we're moving forward with. So I anticipate continued discussions relative to manure digesters, as well as all the things that Lori referenced above. The comprehensive plan and the strategic plan are large endeavors. Those are not things that you, hey, we'll do that over the next month. It's going to take a considerable amount of time, and CPZ is one of the lead entities in each of those endeavors. So that's kind of what we've done to this point, and I kind of foreshadowed what I think is going to come through in the next term. We'll deal with the Assembly's ordinance that should move. We'll have a resolution one way or another on that relatively soon, and then I do expect those additional requests to keep coming relative to digesters, and we're learning as we go there. So that's all I had. Thank you. And if anyone has any questions or you want to have discussion about what you anticipate next term, I think that's a good next step.
I think everything's been covered very well. I'm not going to belabor any points that have already been made. So I appreciate the summaries from Administrator Leonard and Director Miskimins. So any questions at the moment for this group? Okay.
If we are talking about, if we are talking about the future too, I think in this part of the agenda, I think a couple other things. I mean, as County Conservationist Heidenreich mentioned, we would look forward to having a more in-depth discussion as it relates to several conservation topics, because as she said, sometimes these meetings get very overloaded with the rezones, and we appreciate all the work you do with that, and we know it can get exhausting to then get to the end of the meeting and have policy discussions about conservation. But there are several topics that we did start with the ERC last session that we would like to certainly still consider in terms of winter spreading conversations and efforts with the Fenwood to try and look at additional practices or incentives that we could do to help reduce the phosphorus there, and that is connected to one of our outcomes within the strategic plan. So.
One of the things that we might do, thank you for bringing that up, in June or July, I got to time it so that nobody's doing first or second crop hay, I guess. I'd like to have kind of like an abbreviated retreat where essentially we would meet at like noon or 1 o'clock prior to that month's ERC meeting, and we would have a little bit more of a formal onboarding process. Today was a lot. I mean, even for us people that have served on here a term or two. It was a lot today. So I think that would be nice for the 4 new members, for there to be a little bit more of an onboarding process. So it's not that we're ignoring any of the concerns from the new individuals joining us. We just have a lot on our plate for like the next month or two. And then after that, I just want to take a second before we continue forward. We'll do a formal onboarding and we'll dive into the things a little bit more. So just to give you an idea where we're going. Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay.
Look forward to talking about it all.
Cool. Very good. I'm going to assume that covered 6A 1 through 4. So Shad, 6A 5 in 2 minutes or less, maybe?
2 minutes or less. All right. So as Lori mentioned earlier about the Chapter 17 petitions or the petition to kind of change our zoning ordinance, anybody that a township can change or petition to change our ordinance, but as well as a private property owner in one of our county zone towns can also petition. We will have a forthcoming petition next month for it's regarding farm consolidations in county zone towns. So that would affect the general agriculture. And the petition is actually for farm preservation specifically, but it likely could affect the general agricultural zoning district as well. So that'll be coming. We've already started the reach out process to the township. So we're hopeful we'll be able to get some input from the towns for you guys for when that position comes before you, so you guys can have some of their input to help guide your decision.
Okay, so no discussion required for this one. Garrett does a great job in that he will routinely give us like a 2 or 3 month notice about potential amendments that might be coming in front of, or might be coming in front of this group. So that's just a heads up as far as what might be in front of ERC shortly, okay? If there are any questions, feel free to ask him now. Otherwise, you can certainly reach out to him via email after the meeting too, so. Okay. 7, policy issues, discussion of potential committee determination. We got nothing. 8, next meeting, June 4th, 2024, 3 p.m., assembly room and future agenda items. A, committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. If you have an idea for an agenda item, Corp Counsel left. How'd that work, Lance? Just email it to me. We're going to do, if that is the case, I'm going to do one-sided communications because I don't want to violate the open meetings law. Suddenly, we end up having an electronic quorum or anything like that. So just to make a note, if you want to contact me, that's fine. Send an idea for a future agenda item. B, announcements, requests, correspondence, Land Conservation Committee training at Lakeview Center on June 26th.
I'm going to have the county conservationist tell you a little bit about that.
Kirsty.
Yes, so you will see an email with information about this, but we would absolutely love it if you could mark your calendars for this. This is a partial day event. You will be receiving an email from Wisconsin Land and Water. So again, that's our state conservation organization. What they do every 2 years is they organize trainings in different parts of Wisconsin specifically for land conservation committees. So there will be a central Wisconsin training where you and your colleagues from surrounding counties can come to Wausau, and the Wisconsin Land and Water staff will be there to go through what it means to be a land conservation committee, what you're asked to do via state statutes, all the tools that are available to you. It will be an excellent training. Their staff are wonderful. You will walk away from this training so thankful that you went to it. I promise you. So you will, if you haven't already, you will start to receive emails from Wisconsin Land and Water. Please don't delete them. Even just open them and look at them very briefly. They won't all apply to you, but many of them will. We'll also try to send you a personal email about June 26th, but it's right here in Wausau. It's just a couple hours of your time. You will leave equipped and ready to rock and roll on this committee after that training. So hope to see you there.
All right, then the last thing I'm going to add, unless anybody's got anything else, but there's no this will be the first part of my announcement. For this part of the agenda, there's no discussion here. This is just general announcements that we might make about upcoming trainings, or if I have something that I want to make you all aware of. That's really the purpose of this one. So it's not additional discussion. This is not specifically noticed for us to have discussion or may take any action. So I just want to be clear about that. So Supervisor Seefeld, you got something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Did anybody go out to the town of Ringo last night? Oh.
Yeah,
But-
that can be follow-up.
Yeah,
That's,
I was just wondering if somebody went out there.
okay. All right, that's the announcement. Anything else? All right, I just got one thing to say. So first of all, welcome new members. Appreciate you joining us for the ERC. Thank you to the returning members for joining us again. It's great to see you all back. I just want to say that, being the chair of the ERC, there might be situations even like today where we disagree with each other. We might not see eye to eye on certain things. And there might be situations where we as policymakers don't see eye to eye with what the staff recommendation might be. I like to think, though, that at the end of the day, we can make that decision. We can move on to the next thing. We don't hold grudges. Each day is a new day. We got to work with what we got, right? So, focusing on being the healthiest, safest, most prosperous county in Wisconsin, right? That helps us unify around stuff, even though we got disagreements. So, and thank you for entrusting me to be the chair of this committee. I appreciate it. So, all right, that's all I got. Number 9, who wants to make it? First one on the term, Supervisor Seefeld. Second by Supervisor Kroll. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff. Appreciate it.
This meeting is no longer being recorded.
Chairman, you had stopped by. What can I help? No, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's fine. No, that makes total sense. I appreciate your comments. If anything, I can use that. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, sorry it took so long. I don't know what I did when I moved it.
It might be on the side.